Picking up where we left off, we were about 40 minutes into the debate. So let's get this debate review finished.
And these are just the first ones that popped up on Google. This isn't even something I would have expected to find, but it's neat that these exist because it directly refutes what I would, categorize as a racist assertion that black people happen to use condoms at a lower rate than white people.
A racist assertion. We were talking
about. Of course it is, because it's not based on fact. So you're just guessing that this is the reason why they quote unquote have broken families, because they don't use condoms. It's weird, but I mean, I don't know. There's no other way of characterizing that.
All right, it wasn't a racist assertion. We were talking about why single parent households are more prevalent, and I can be a Google ninja too. I can pull up a CDC report on who uses contraceptives more. It's not that difficult.
We start out with this long discussion on whether black people are more or less likely to use condoms. I guess this is somehow supposed to be related to the issue of absentee fathers. Now, both sides end up citing two conflicting studies. I consider this to be irrelevant to a discussion of systemic racism, especially where both sides agree that blacks commit more crime.
Okay, so like right here, I have percentage of women age 15 to 49 who currently using female sterilization, oral contraceptive pill, male condom, or long-lasting reversible contraceptives in the United States. And you can see it's coded. Is this one coded by race? Yeah. All right. I think it's the next chart, actually. Here we go. This one is coded by race. And you can see the green is black non-Hispanic. And this is female sterilization, which skews older, obviously, because people get sterilized when they're older. Pills, it's under. Condoms is under, which is what we were talking about. And long-lasting reversible contraceptives are under.
I tried to find this chart that Actual Justice Warrior brought up. The page he looks at focuses on surveys of females about their contraceptive use. I ended up stumbling upon a different one focused on men. This one actually suggests that Hispanics are the least likely to use contraception, but at a very close rate to blacks. By contrast, white men are 5 to 6% more likely to use contraceptives. I feel this just reiterates my feeling that this isn't worthwhile to debate over. It's too tangential to the debate.
Right, it's the 1350 argument.
You acknowledge that the behavior is different, and that could lead, just potentially, theoretically, to a difference in level of police interaction.
Well, what I was hoping by showing you all these studies and stats is at a certain point you'd accept that.
I mean, you're literally
because we're gonna get into that part too, John. Don't worry.
We'll in a little circle.
Right, so like you could get to that part as well. I haven't denied once that they're not committing more crimes
beforehand, and I could have reviewed it. Like, if you wanted to show me this.
No, I don't think a lot of these things are up for dispute. Maybe it's the first time you've heard them. But anyways, I want to talk about this other study.
First time I've heard it.
Did TheSerf watch Actual Justice Warrior's debate with Vosh? Or at the very least the first third of the debate, which focused on the same exact topic? He seems absolutely baffled that he hasn't been able to sway Actual Justice Warrior. Of course, this would be a ridiculous expectation to have in a partisan political debate. After all, Vosh also failed to sway him. This is despite the fact that Vosh argued more persuasively on this topic.
Okay, cool. So this is the largest study that looks at about 19,000 police interactions across the board in the United States. Right? African Americans are more likely than whites and other groups to be the victims of the use of force by the police, even when racial disparities in crime are taken into account. So it doesn't matter.
But how did they behave in the stop? Because black people are more likely to resist arrest when it comes to interacting with the police.
Even when racial disparities in the crime are taken into account.
In crime, but we're talking about resisting arrest. That's like the Michael Brown thing. He wasn't shot for, stealing something from a convenience store. He was shot for fighting the police officer.
Black people are less likely to respect the authority of police officers. They're more likely to ascribe racist motivations to them. It just wouldn't be fair for me to take white test scores and compare them to black test scores and make some sort of sweeping judgment about blacks. The black and white experience and culture in America is just too different for that to be a fair comparison. Likewise, you can't simply or easily compare the white and black experience with the police.
Oh, it is important, absolutely. I mean, I can also explain the reason why that members of the black community seem to be.
What police department were they examining, if you don't mind me asking?
Sorry, which one?
What police department were they examining?
Center for Policing and Equality. The one that I was just talking about from UCLA was looking at Boston.
Wait a minute. Didn't you just say that it isn't fair to use specific departments? Didn't you say any data had to be drawn from the entire United States?
Like, and that's the famous New Jersey traffic study. You can look it up just with that name. Like, this isn't like hard to figure out. There's different behavior.
But again, so these are cherry pick stats. What we should be looking at is the aggregate. We should be looking at overall what's happening in the United States, right? Okay. Yeah. Police used less force with highly stereotypical whites, and this protective effect was stronger than the effect for non-whites. And then there was another one, the Stanford study on the police practices in Oakland, California, which is one of the worst. Regardless of the area of the city, disproportionate treatment by race was similar, and the raw totals were stunning. Of 2890 African Americans handcuffed but not arrested in a 13-month period, only 193 whites were cuffed in the same interactions when everything else was accounted for.
I mean, how are they scoring the interactions?
I'd have to. I mean, going through the methodology.
I'm just curious because like no two police stops are identical, so I'm curious.
Let's start with the UCLA Boston police study. I'm fairly certain that this study just doesn't exist. I could find no evidence using various parts of Google of any study that UCLA did on the Boston Police Department. So let's move on to the Stanford study and the Oakland police. We'll need to break this one down. Number 1. The Oakland police study examined how often people of different racial groups were handcuffed by police. It controlled for whether the stops were of a car, a pedestrian, or a bicycle. The study also excluded anyone who was arrested as a result of the stop. Number 2. The Oakland study didn't control for why the stop was conducted. For example, we don't know what percentage of these stops were related to felony investigations versus petty traffic violations. Number 3. The study also didn't consider the reason why the individual in each instance was handcuffed, nor did it consider whether the person had been hostile or displayed some sort of negative attitude towards officers. Number 4. The study also didn't cross-reference its data with CalGang. CalGang is California's gang database. If Stanford had cross-referenced the data, it would have been able to exclude documented gang members. I'd assume that this alone would significantly reduce the disparity found by the study.
On the final one, when I look at the actual levels of violent crime in the U.S. cities and to determine the rates of police violence, it's not about crime, unfortunately. So the rates where police are killing people are not proportional to the amount of violent crime that's taking place in the city. The worst in the U.S. is Oklahoma, I believe. But of the 8 largest cities where black men are being killed, 8 of the 100 largest city departments where black men are killed are higher rates than the U.S. murder rate. And that includes Reno, Oklahoma, Santa Ana, Anaheim, St. Louis.
This is because it's so rare for police officers to kill people. It's inevitable, therefore, that the top cities for deaths by police would be entirely arbitrary.
Okay. But so you're saying in every one of these cases, it's a guy coming out another
dude. The overwhelming. I'm just saying a knife, a gun. Gun, which can easily
But these are isolated examples. Like what is the point of data, right? What is the point of aggregate data if we can't use it to paint a broader picture? If we can't use it, like
this is in the overall data. I can bring up the data which compares unarmed suspects to armed suspects. Are you arguing that the armed suspects or a huge portion of the armed suspects that are killed by police are killed unjustifiably?
It would depend on the scenario. I would have to. It's like it would be a case by case basis. If you tell me, hey, in this situation, the guy's running at him, he's about to stab him in the neck with the knife. What does he do? It'd be like, okay. And the other one, he's like 20 feet away from him, and he's like, he may have a knife, he may have like a toy car.
Just as an aside here, if someone is within 21 feet of an officer and is armed with a knife, then that person can usually stab the officer before the officer can draw and fire their gun. I've had this demonstrated to me by a police officer before and can attest to its accuracy.
At about 10 feet, you might get your sidearm out, but you probably won't get a shot off. A suspect with a knife can close 7 paces and deliver deadly force in less than 1 1/2 seconds. At about 15 feet, your chances get a little better if you're alert, anticipate danger, and are skilled with your equipment. Tests with hundreds of officers reveal that in most cases, a minimum reactionary gap of 21 feet is required to react and deliver at least 2 rounds and to have enough time to move out of the attacker's path.
I'm glad you picked 20 feet because somebody running full speed with a knife inside of 21 feet can get to you before you draw your gun out of your holster for the average officer. So I'm glad you used 20 feet as an example, because that's the perfect range where an officer should be able to shoot a suspect that's charging at him with a knife.
Cool.
Yep, actual Justice Warrior knows what he's talking about. He's absolutely right on this. Any police officer would agree.
If you go to the Washington Post, how they chart this data, the ones that they say are unarmed represent like 30 out of the 1,000 a year. So we're not going to talk about the 970 plus cases. We're just going to talk about the 30. But you don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about the overall data, even though the majority of the cases that make up that data involved armed suspects. And it actually lists out the type of weapons that they have, so you can go over the scenario. So my point is that most of the time it's a gun. Even some of those unarmed cases, there are actions that could be misinterpreted for carrying a gun. But like most of the time it's a gun, and those are almost indisputable ones. If you see a gun and you think they're about to shoot you, and you shoot them, makes perfect sense. There are knives. A knife is a deadly weapon, baseball bat, like all kinds of different weapons that people have on them that represent, again, the overwhelming majority of police killings in the United States.
If these two went case by case over all of the unarmed black people who have been killed by police through the Washington Post database, TheSerf would get utterly destroyed. Tucker Carlson did this on his show a while back for a single year, and it was absolutely devastating just how justified these shootings were.
Yeah, and by the ratio of this own study that we're both talking about right now, it says you are 3.49 times more likely to be killed if you are black and unarmed than you are white.
Your population, they have higher rates of violent crime. Like you don't measure we went over this last time. You don't measure in terms of overall population when the behavior of one population is significantly different than the other one.
In this case, we're accounting for the population. Like we're accounting for the fact that this is by ratio of their population. That they make up 13% of the population of the United States, and yet they're accounted for in this way.
Yes, I understand that you're presenting me numbers that are comparing the population to the percentage shot. I understand that. But the population behavior is different.
Okay. How about we move on to Chicago versus New York?
Wow. That's some real great debating there, Serf.
Yeah, but I found out the reason why. Like, it turns out from 1985 to 2009, the homicide in New York dropped 82%, assault 67%, burglary 86%, and then Chicago has a lower crime rate than it did in the 80s or 90s due to the fact that it's like down everywhere. But the violent crime rate is 32% higher than New York. And then I was like, well, maybe that was because, a lot of people justify it with stop and frisk or something like that. But that doesn't explain why there was a 95% shift in auto thefts and burglaries. It was actually completely explainable by economic flight, systemic housing discrimination.
While I agree that gentrification played a large role in black people leaving New York and dropping the crime rate there, it's important to point out what caused this gentrification. Number one. During the 70s and 80s, New York City was a shithole. In the 70s, New York City was the capital for heroin junkies. Drug and prostitution laws weren't enforced, and race riots were common. The movie Taxi Driver is emblematic of this period. Number two. In the 1980s, New York City became the capital of the crack epidemic. Violent crime was out of control. 1980s New York City was the obvious inspiration for the setting of the recent Joker movie. Number three. The reason New York City gentrified is because the police started aggressively enforcing its laws through broken windows policing. Who would have thought that people prefer to live in neighborhoods that don't look like war-torn slums?
Brooklyn, the NYPD drove down the crime in the borough of Brooklyn, and now Brooklyn's so ridiculously nice, I can't afford to live there. It's certain parts, not all.
Sure. So again, that's the cart before the horse. It's not disputed by any different version of academia, especially as far as I can see, as broad as I could check out. In terms of the causality of what causes crime, it's poverty.
I don't think there's as big of an academic consensus on this than he thinks. The most compelling book that I've read on the issue of what causes crime indicates that it's a result of narcissistic criminal personalities. The type of personality that's celebrated by black culture. The type that's fostered and made excuses for by our corporate woke culture.
Which means that people's parents need to make better decisions, and you should make better decisions because you can get out of poverty in the United States of America. It's
No,
not
you
different.
can absolutely, yeah, no question. But some people just start the race way ahead. It's not fair for them, right? That's kind of the problem. And when it comes to Black Americans, there's a reason, and I can explain it very simply, why they get stuck in these perpetual cycles.
Because they're having kids out of wedlock. Because it's their decision making.
No, because for the first like 250 years of them being in the country, they were slaves, and part of that was that they were producing wealth for white people.
Yeah, except you're leaving out something pretty important. In the 1950s and 1960s, black crime was rare and exceptional. Almost all black people got married and did so before having children. Clearly, slavery then is not the cause of these problems. A society that's willing to make excuses for the selfish decisions of individuals, particularly individual blacks, is clearly the intervening cause.
More time.
Did the black middle class in the United States of America grow faster pre-Civil Rights Act or post-Civil Rights Act?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd be interested to learn.
Okay, well, I did look it up, and it's true. After the Civil Rights Act, the marriage rate for blacks collapsed. The black crime rate skyrocketed. Rates of black victimization also shot through the roof. Actual Justice Warrior believes this is all tied to the fact that blacks stopped getting married. I asked the following question: why did they stop getting married? I'd say that the Civil Rights Act didn't bring equality to blacks. Instead, it brought them inequality. Blacks now had more privileges and entitlements than whites. After all, the Civil Rights Act allowed for things like affirmative action and PC culture. As proud black men, blacks weren't going to work for the white man doing manual labor. Black women were sure as hell not going to marry some black guy with no job. Of course, Lyndon Baines Johnson's Great Society means-tested welfare program catered perfectly to this newly created sense of entitlement.
No, there's a higher level of murder of white farmers in South Africa.
I mean, there could be, but they don't keep murder stats based on what job you work in South Africa.
Do you believe in Great Replacement Theory?
What's the Great Replacement Theory? Explain it to me.
I can't tell if you're memeing right now. I don't know how far down the rabbit hole I've come here.
I'm just asking you. Well, so
the idea that white people are being systemically replaced by other demographics through both immigration and through policies.
I'm sorry, I missed what you were saying.
The idea that white people are being systemically replaced by other demographics, whether that be through immigration or through policies.
Oh, that's like the browning of America. Is that are you saying that's
I don't know if that's what it's called, but are
you saying that's a conspiracy theory? The New York Times reports on that America is becoming a more brown country.
First off,
I think TheSerf has been officially broken at this point. He's desperately throwing nonsense around, hoping to score some sort of "that's racist" gotcha point. He's coming across here as completely desperate.
Okay, so you're not saying whether this is negative or positive, but you're saying that there's a replacement of white people by brown people in America.
Well, I'm Hispanic. I'm a daywalker, so
Sure.
Why would I be against it? I've replaced a white person. Most people mistake me for white, but I'm Hispanic.
Yeah, well, neat. But
real brilliant strategy there, Serf. Are you gonna call him racist against his own ethnic group now? This is what getting blown out looks like in a debate. By the way, this is a thing that happened.
So according to the FBI statistics on this, 30% is the average of cases that have gone through.
But that's not
so even that to me. Sorry.
You just said 7, and now it's 30. This was my point.
Okay, but even 30%, if that was the case, right? An analysis of FBI data.
Can you link me that? I'd love to see how those numbers are broken down if they contain the unreported cases. Because a lot of those stats, like RAIN does this notoriously. First of all, they wildly overestimate the underreported cases. They never pull from the NCVS, which is the largest survey of victims. And then they do like their 2% number or whatever. And that's wholly inaccurate when you look at the overall data. Like, you've already jumped from 7% charged to 30%. Is that convicted or charged?
I don't know. I'm trying to look it up now. And again, this isn't the gotcha you think it is, right? Like, we are trying to find this out at the same time.
I'm just explaining it to you. Like why can't you just acknowledge that you might have been wrong about something? I'm just curious about that. because you just said it was 30% after saying 70%, and I pointed out that
man, if you could talk to a mirror, hey, we've been doing this for like an hour and a half, and I have disproved every single point we've come across. I have brought so much data, statistics, science to this conversation, and every single time you're like, okay, all right, okay. Oh, I guess
7%.
I suppose. Like, then what was the fucking point of this at the end of the day? Like, holy shit, dude.
He just said it was 7% charged, and then he pulls up another number, and it's 30%. Now, he's fake laughing right now, so we'll wait for him to, tire himself out before I bring him back up. But I did not imagine that. He said 7% charged, and then he switched to 30%.
Neat.
Are you ready? You good? You had your little breather?
Am I back on? I didn't know you would mute me. That's neat.
Yeah. If you're gonna laugh, and every time you change your statement on something, you say this isn't the gotcha that you think it is. You did that last time.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything wasn't the gotcha that I thought it was, and then you obliterated your Mike Brown video, which wasn't the gotcha that I thought it was.
Now, normally I give you my opinion on how the debate went and who won. However, I don't think I could describe it any better than actual Justice Warrior did himself. I agree 100% with his description of the debate during his closing statement addressing the Serf's own closing statement.
I'll be totally frank. I don't understand how you as a person have such a combination of being condescending and sounding as if you were confident on these issues when you come across as just a human cherub. I have brought nothing but information in terms of stats, statistics, and overall, I don't know, scientific analysis on these topics. And at the same time, you just sit back with this kind of glib look on your face as if none of this matters. And at the end of the day, as someone who's got a background in criminology, this has been an abject embarrassment for you, sir. I would say this is nothing short of the debate equivalent of a dad walking in on his son masturbating while he simultaneously shit himself. And I say that full well knowing that you're probably going to have to call me daddy from here on out, because I'm going to continue to body you on this information because you are on the wrong side of history, my dude, when it comes to this. And the facts, the data, the science will always back this up when it comes to this kind of stuff. Oh, and trans motherfucking rights.
Was that it? Am I supposed to be impressed by that?
No,
So, just so you know, that's called earned confidence. It is the confidence associated with being a man. That's what I possess, and you seem to be significantly lacking in that regard. That's also weirdly, and this isn't the first time you've done this, the exact same line of language to discuss me that Vosh uses. I don't know whether or not you're a fan. Don't really care, but I understand that. And you said body, which is like an ask yourself thing. So you've now hit the trifecta of people that I can't stand on the internet. I smoked you on Michael Brown. I shamed you on Michael Brown. That's why your Michael Brown video is gone. That's why you made a video giving in on every single point. That's why you showed up here hat in hand for an opportunity to expose yourself to a bigger audience. So I hope you got this. I hope you got the notoriety that you were looking for. Next time, maybe send me some of the data that you're trying to wow me with, impress me with, or maybe get comfortable talking about the issue of black crime instead of stumbling and fumbling because this whole issue makes you uncomfortable. So thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, but get the fuck out.
Anyways, that's all I have to say for this debate review. If you enjoyed the video and you're not subscribed to my channel, please support small YouTube channels like mine by subscribing. Thank you.